So welcome. So we're up to part 3 of this series, and I have had a few time management issues over the last couple of weeks. So I do apologize for that. And I'm kind of freaking out about tonight's session. But anyway, so for those who were here at the very beginning, we looked at this concept of the universe in Buddhist texts. And especially we looked at these concepts of space, which is filled with various world systems, not just one small solar system, but multiple realms. And we investigated this vastness of space. We looked at this sense of cosmic time that exists in Buddhism that is measured in terms of eons, and that's called a kappa. This is the length of time it takes for a world cycle to be created, exist, and to be destroyed. And this is billions and billions of years. Michael, I don't know if we need the sound system, just so that people can hear. And so we kind of examined a bit of space time in the Buddhist concepts. And last week we looked at the hell realms, the realms of deprivation. And we ran out of time to look at the ghost realms, but we've been talking about that here. And tonight we're looking at heavenly realms and how to get there. So last week we kind of talked about how we'd like to avoid the hell realms or the states of deprivation. This week, hopefully we're going to get a sense of why we should encourage ourselves, at the very least, if we don't manage to get enlightened in this life, then we might at the very least try to go to heaven. So we're going to look at these heavenly realms, and there's a lot of them. Some of you might remember this image. This is the whole world system. So at the bottom here, we have the hell realms. Then we have this terrestrial plane with the 4 continents, Mount Sinaru at the center. And then we have here the first of the heaven realms, and then more heaven realms, and all these ones up here, including these ones over here. These are all the heaven realms in Buddhism. So here's another way we can imagine it. Whoop. Don't know how to get rid of this, but anyway, I'll just keep moving it around. And here's another list of the heavens. So you can see there's many different realms. So you can see why I'm freaking out a bit about getting through them. And here's another way we can think about these planes of existence. I really want to get rid of this thing. Yeah, anyway. So you can see this purple section here, this green section here, and part of this pink section here. We start with these Deva realms, and we go all the way up here. These are all heavenly realms. So it's quite a lot. And it's a very diverse range of beings and existences and experiences that we're looking at tonight. So the first range of, thank you very much. So just got to turn the sound on because it's a bit noisy with the rain. I'm kind of yelling. So the first realm that we find ourselves in is in the Kama Bhumi realm. So this is the realm of sense desire, of um, sensory experience. Last week we looked at the realms of deprivation, and I mentioned that there's also realms of happiness in this plane as well. And this is the human realm, which we're in, and the Deva realm, the realm of the lower heavens. And there's 6 different types of lower heavens. So we're going to look at those tonight. Hopefully we'll get through those and maybe the next lot as well. And they're in what's called the Rupa Bhumi, the form realm. And so these beings are also known as the Brahma Lokas, and there's 16 different realms. So I'm not sure we'll get through them all. And then even more beyond that is the Arupa Bhumi, the formless realm. And here there's beings without bodies, just perception beings, just beings perceiving things. And they exist in 4 different levels. So that's the 3 divisions of beings that are known as gods, deities, heavenly beings, as devas or brahmas. And at this point, I want to talk about the problematic language of translation of these terms. So when we think about heaven or hell or gods or demons, we bring with us our own cultural context. And for a lot of us, our perception of what it means to have a heaven might be formed by Western Christian cultural experience, might be informed by things like our study of history, such as the gods of Olympus or Valhalla. It might be formed by those TV shows. I think I remember one called American Gods. And so it could be a very different idea of heaven to what the Buddha and his contemporaries understood. So our terms need a little bit of context. First thing I want to remind you of is that unlike the Christian heaven, for example, Buddhist heavens are multiple. There's not just one. There's many, 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 many. And again, unlike the Christian tradition, heaven is not a permanent state. It's an impermanent state. It can last from a very short amount of time that we could understand in human years, or it could be measured in terms of many, many hundreds, even thousands of eons. That means a very, 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 very long time. But in all these cases, it's impermanent. So it's temporary. And I want to just mention at this point, in case we don't get to them all, one Buddhist heaven is not like the other. These are very, very, very different experiences, from the lowest heavens to the highest heavens. Completely different experiences. And so our experience of the human realm is a very limited kind of experience of the universe in terms of the way the Buddhist cosmologists think about it. And our experience of past lives, perhaps we have already been in heaven. Who knows? We might have had some experience of these places, perhaps not the higher realms, but maybe the lower realms. they're not that different from humans, as we'll discover. And again, as I mentioned in the previous weeks, this stuff just didn't appear out of nowhere. This stuff kind of is a smudgy, grey, cultural experience that didn't begin only with the Buddha, but existed prior. These concepts of heavenly beings just didn't pop out of nowhere. They were preceded by a cultural context that saw these beings in various ways. And the Buddha actually spent a lot of time critiquing and reinventing these concepts. And after the Buddha, there was a lot of proliferation of ideas, a lot of systematizing of ideas, and later traditions added even more and more deities to the mix. And I want to also acknowledge that the sources that we rely upon are not necessarily internally consistent. So sometimes what I'm presenting as fact might be a little bit less certain. And we just have to go with one interpretation, especially when it comes to things like the size of the bodies of the gods or the amount of years that they live. All of this stuff is a little bit sketchy. So that's just some background. And the words that used in the Pali text to describe the heavenly beings or the deities is devas. And I think it comes from our word deity comes from the same root. It means like shining one, something that shines. And these heavenly beings all have bodies that are radiant, beautiful. And perhaps it has something to do with the idea of the heavens, right? That there's beings that perhaps previous generations thought that the stars were devas. And certainly diva is like that for us from the Italian. And so this term is applied to many, many different kinds of beings. And we use the word God when we refer to them in English. This might be a bit confusing because for some people, God will mean like a creator being who is all-powerful and omniscient. And this is not how all of these gods are. The kind of gods we might think about in the lower realms are much more like those ancient Greek gods, kind of rousing about, having sex, enjoying pleasures and all that sort of thing. And sometimes we have these words like Devata and Devaputta, which means like a lesser form of these gods, almost like a semi-god or a kind of demigod. And then we have this other term called the Brahmas. And the Brahmas are a completely different kettle of fish. They're very different to us as humans. And so in that sense, if the lower level gods, it's quite warm in here, is it me? The lower level gods are a little bit like humans, but the Brahmas are nothing like the lower level gods, nothing like humans. And they have much more power, much more refinement, much more subtlety. They experience greater degrees of pleasure and happiness, bliss, and they don't experience pain and suffering. So we sometimes refer to this class of beings only as Brahma, but sometimes we'll confuse things by also referring to them as devas. So just a little bit of information about that. Basically, Brahmas are devas, but not all devas are Brahmas. Okay? Cool. So I just wanted to give that general introduction, and then I wanted us to do a meditation based on the devas, based on the divine beings. So this is a meditation recommended by the Buddha. It's called an anusati. It means to recollect something. And a lot of you will be familiar with the anusatis we teach regularly, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha Anusati, where we chant the Iti Piso. This is a anusati. Many of you will have also experienced the chagunasati that I often teach, the recollection of generosity. We also teach the recollection of sila, ethical conduct. This is when we consciously turn our mind to think about these things. We bring them up in our mind, and because we're associating our mind with something beautiful and precious, something true and amazing, our mind becomes joyful. And this joy becomes a very beautiful state of mind that deepens into what we call rapture. And then the rapture becomes tranquility, the tranquility becomes bliss, and that bliss leads the mind into samadhi. This is why the Buddha recommended recollecting these beautiful things, because of their power to move our mind from this ordinary world into a beautiful, deep state of meditation. And so when the Buddha teaches these anusatis, the Devanusati is like this, gives us an overview of the cosmos. There are the gods of the 4 great kings.
I was wondering if you might bring back the Devas and the Brahmas. I was hoping to take a good photo on it.
I'll share this with you later. Yeah, I'll share it we'll send out an email with the videos and I'll have the slides.
Thanks.
So otherwise, if we have to stop for everyone. So there are these gods of the 4 great kings. We're going to meet them later. The gods of the 33, the gods of Yama, the joyful gods, the gods who love to create, the gods who control the creations of others, the gods of Brahma's host, and gods even higher than those. When those deities passed away from here, they were reborn there because of their faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. And this is the part where we recollect, I too, you, us, we also have the same kind of faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. So this word faith, this is saddha, which is a kind of confidence, a conviction that comes from personal experience of the Dhamma. When we experience the truth in the Dhamma, we gain some confidence, some conviction. It's very powerful. So this is not faith as in the blind faith or the faith that relies upon another being to help us. It's more like conviction or confidence. Then we have sila, which is ethics, learning, sutanta, learning the teachings, like we're doing here. This is something that helps us understand the path. Then we have chaga, generosity, and panya, wisdom. So all of you in this room, to varying degrees, have some of these qualities, right? We're interested in the Dhamma because we've had some sort of experience. The Buddha says there's suffering. And you look at your life and you're like, he's right. You gain confidence in the teaching, right? Or that meditation will make our mind tranquil. You do some meditation, you become tranquil. You gain some confidence. This is the kind of faith that we can have. It's not the same kind of faith that someone who's been practicing a long time or has a really great experiential understanding of the path would have. It's good enough, right? Same with our ethical conduct. It might not be the purest in the world, but it's pretty good. You're all pretty good people. We have some generosity in our hearts, right? And we have some learning, which we're doing, and we have some wisdom. And this is the qualities that we can develop within ourselves that would lead to birth in the heavenly realms. So in Buddhism, things are like you do this, you encourage that, and you get the result of that. If you do good things like you practice ethics and generosity, then your result will be that you will have this karmic return of living in a pure place, pure state, and having a lot of things, a lot of wealth, generosity, The practice of generosity is what brings wealth. Practicing ethics is what will bring us safety. And so this is how this recollection works. We think, I have these God-like qualities in myself, these qualities of the gods. The things that they did to get there, I have them myself. Does everyone understand? Yeah? Should we do just like 10 minutes of this practice? Yeah. So this is the practice that is said will inspire us on the path and lead to rebirth in the heavenly realms. And I'll talk about why we want that a bit later. So let's just take a few moments of practice. We won't do terribly long, so we're already running out of time. So let's just take a few moments, sit and be comfortable. Very good. So let's just allow our body to relax. Allow your mind to feel like it's here and now, being present, being aware. And you are a person with so many good qualities. You are. You are a good person. You have so many beautiful qualities. Allow yourself a little smile. Yes, I am a good person. I have beautiful qualities in my heart. I have some confidence in the Buddha's teachings. I have a system of ethical conduct that I keep. I learn about the Dhamma. I practice generosity. And all this has helped me develop some wisdom. How wonderful. How amazing. How fortunate for me that I am a good person with so many beautiful qualities. All the devas, all the beings in the heavenly realms, they too developed these qualities. The qualities I have are the same. Those devas, those beings, were reborn in heaven because of these qualities. And I have these qualities within myself. How fortunate for me. How wonderful to have these qualities within myself. Of conviction, confidence, faith, of ethics, morality, of learning, investigating, of generosity and kindness, and of wisdom, knowing, understanding. By recognizing and developing these qualities within myself, I will make progress in the Dhamma. And if I don't attain enlightenment, then perhaps I will receive a good rebirth in the heavenly realms. Thinking like this, that smile on your face brings joy in your heart, happiness, bliss. It's this kind of mind that the gods have too. Happiness, bliss. Imagine. Imagine experiencing bliss and happiness, pleasure all the time. This is the result that comes naturally from developing our mind with faith, ethics, study, generosity, and wisdom. These qualities lead to rebirth in the heavenly realms. Very good. So we'll allow that experience of those other realms to fade, and you can relax your awareness, coming back to this very everyday, ordinary, very human existence here. And so you see how it works, right? You see how in the spiritual path, we're actively developing our mind. Everything we do, we are developing our mind. Sometimes we might develop our mind towards anger and hate, hurting people, and so we'll experience the future results of that anger and hate, both here in this life and in the future. And when we develop our minds towards beautiful states like kindness and love, then that's the way our mind inclines. And that's what we'll experience in the future. So it's pretty simple, really, this idea. And we can see it in ourselves, the way our minds have changed as we've been walking the spiritual path. Many of us have come out of things like anger, hatred, and have learned how beneficial it is to practice generosity and kindness. And we see the results in our lives, in our relationships, in our own mind. And so, at the very least, we could experience in this life some goodness that comes from that. When we talk later about very deep states of meditation, there we're conditioning the mind in a very deep and profound way to experience exquisite states of bliss. And so, if we can develop our mind in this way, then the natural inclination of our mind will be towards bliss. And so we'll experience a result in our next life based on that level of development in our mind through meditation. So this is why these realms that we're looking at, which are very broad and very diverse, are about this life here and now, what we're doing here and now in this life, developing our own mind. Because what we're doing in the present will condition what we'll experience in the future. This is just very basic Buddhist ideas about karma. Our intentions, our actions, these are what lead to future results for us. So if we're smart, if we're wise, we should think very carefully about the kinds of things we do. And we even should choose the kinds of thoughts, actions, speech, experiences that we can have so that our future results will be better. And so this is this concept of the heavens. Many of us will have heard people say, you know, you have to get enlightened don't go to heaven, things like that. And of course, that's the kind of Buddhist aim. The aim is to come out of suffering completely, because remember, these sensual heavens, these fine material heavens, all of these different realms, they're still in the realm of samsara. There's still suffering. There's still suffering involved in all of these heavenly realms, in the fact that they're impermanent and they're not a complete escape from samsara. So let's have a look at these lower heavens, the heavens that we find in this sensual realm, the realm that also includes us as humans, animals, and other unfortunate beings like hell beings and ghosts. These gods exist within this realm, and so they're quite closely related to humans and other beings. So the first realm is the Chatu Maharajika. Chatu means four, Maha means great, and Raja is king. So this is the god of the four great kings. So this is the lowest heavenly realm that's mentioned within these six sensual heavens or sagas. Then we have the Tavatimsa. Tavatimsa, this word means 33, and it's the gods of 33. So there's a few numbers, yeah? 4 makes sense because it's the gods of the cardinal direction. 33, I don't know, might be some magical number. So these two realms, the Chatu Maharajika realm and the Tavatimsa realm, in that picture of the Buddhist universe, these are on Mount Sinaru. The Chatu Maharajika devas live halfway up the mountain, and the Tavatimsa heavens at the top of the mountain. So these two realms are very connected with our realm, and they have a kind of role that they play in our realm. And then we have the gods of Yama. So we met Yama last week, the god of death, but this is a different word, Yama. And then we have the Tusita heavens, which some of you might have heard of before, where the gods are all joyful. And then we have the Nima Narati Devas. These are gods who love to create things. And finally, we have the Parani Mitawasawati Devas, the gods who enjoy the creations of others. So these are 6 heavens associated with our realm, the desire realm, Kama Bhumi. So I think I'll just stop sharing that. Well, I forgot to share on Zoom. Oh well, sorry about that, people watching on Zoom. So again, I would just want to acknowledge that there's a wide variety of beings within these realms, and they experience really different things. They are mortal, and they live long lives. Again, I want to mention that they're like humans. We find out these beings, although they enjoy a lot of pleasure, they also are full of passion, and they like to listen to music. They like to eat yummy food. They also like to have sex. That's why these beings are the lowest form of heavenly rebirth. They're the closest to sensuality, sensual pleasures. They're still in this desire realm. These beings are spontaneously reborn. So when they die in a previous life, they appear magically in this heavenly realm. Their bodies are fully formed. It's as if they just woke up. They are gendered. So unfortunately, we only seem to have 2 genders with these gods. They have sex organs. and they also have sex. And it seems like most of the time it's kind of heterosexual sex. They eat a kind of food which is very subtle, but it's still a material. There's still a substance to it. They're invisible to humans, but they are sometimes seen as bright lights. And of course, as we mentioned before, this is rebirth in these realms is due to things like generosity and morality. So you might think this sounds great. It's like slightly better than being human. You still get to have a kind of sex. You still get to eat a kind of food. You have a beautiful body and nice clothes. So what's the disadvantage? Why would this still be in the realm of suffering? And the reason is because although they've done good things, they're not necessarily very smart and they just enjoy themselves so much that they forget to practice the Dharma. They forget about things like impermanence. They forget to keep on making good merit. And so at any time they could die and then they have to come back down to a different realm. And so I wanted to just mention a little bit about this idea of mortality for the Devas. So for us, our experience of our life is um, suffering, not just because of, you know, things going wrong, but principally because of old age, sickness, and death. And so the old age and the sickness are things that we kind of wish we could do without. The death, we know death is coming for us, but we're like, we understand we have to die. But that old age and that sickness is what causes us a lot of suffering in our lives. It's either as to get older. For a Deva, they don't experience sickness. They don't experience old age. What happens for a Deva in these lower realms is their clothes, they wear beautiful clothes, their clothes start to get a bit wrinkled, a bit soiled. Right? So this is how they start to know, oh my gosh, my life is coming to an end. Not because their bones are creaking, but because their clothes start to look a bit shabby. And their garlands fade. They're beautiful garlands that they wear on their heads. The flowers start to wither, right? Impermanence. They begin to sweat. So these are beings that previously their bodies were these clean and pure, perfectly, I guess, sweet smelling bodies, but now they start to sweat, right? They're losing the bodily radiance that they have as gods. They're starting to 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 dissipate, to disintegrate into, I guess, like a refined form of abject bodily nature. And lastly, they start to be a bit uncomfortable in their seat. Remember that they've been experiencing pleasure and contentment. And so this discomfort is new and it's not nice. Discomfort isn't nice. And so this is what's happening. They're starting to lose the good things that they had accumulated from the past. Their life is coming to an end, and soon they will die. And when they die, they just disappear. And they might go to another heavenly realm, they might go to a hell realm, they might go to an animal womb, or they might go to a human womb, and they'll be reborn. So I just thought it was nice to know about how these beings come to pass. Yes.
So they still have intention then.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they have the opportunity to learn. And I guess they have the opportunity to be good to each other and kind with each other and generous with each other. Or they could also be quite envious and greedy and hurtful. Because remember, this is the lowest level that we're looking at here. So they're much more like humans than they are like those great Brahmas that we'll meet hopefully later on. So the lowest level of these realms is the four kings, the realm of the four kings. And this is about each direction, which is important in many religions. And these beings actually rule over certain groups of beings, such as the Nagas, the serpents or the dragons, and the dwarf beings, the Gandhabas, we're not quite sure what they are, and the Yakas, that are kind of like kind of type of goblin or demon. And so you might be reborn in this realm with all of these characters. As I said before, they're still connected with the earth. They're up at Mount Sinaru. And this is the easiest place to get reborn into. And again, it's most like human in that they are still involved with humans. And some of you might remember the Asuras that we looked at last week. So the Asuras are these demons that are always trying to get up to the Tavatims of heaven and waging war on the gods in these stories. And so the role of these great kings is like first line of defense. And so they also check out what's going on in the human realm and they write it on a golden tablet and report to their higher ups, right? So they're still full of anger and passion, fighting and all of that kind of thing. But they live very long lives, up to 90,000 human years. It's a long time, right? And they do have sex. It's kind of like humans do, but there's no emission of semen. Okay, so that's the lowest realm, right? Still connected with Mount Sinaru. And then this realm, the Tavatimsa heaven, is about the 33 gods, great gods, and they've all got retinues. And so rebirth here has got to do with popularity and having like, I guess, a good reputation, that sort of thing. And it's kind of very much like Mount Olympus or Valhalla, in that it's kind of like there's a city, there's pleasure parks, there's gold and silver ornaments and jewels and beautiful flowers, there's parties, and it's kind of like here, but without the suffering. So this is, I guess, a very low form of heaven. Oop. Oh no, gone really far. And this heaven is quite famous actually, because one of the things that happened in this heaven is that the Buddha would go up and teach the gods of the Tavatimsa heaven about the Abhidharma. So this is a story about how the Abhidharma, which is one of the three main baskets of Buddhism, which many people believe are much later texts, and to make it a authentic text, the story behind this collection of Dharma is that the Buddha went up to the Tavatimsa heaven and taught that Dharma. And then every day he would come back down uh, using the original stairway to heaven, which you can see there. So there's the Buddha coming down from the Tavatimsa heaven after having given some teachings there. And so again, these gods, they live a very, very long life and longer again than the group that we saw before. And they experience more pleasure than the group that we just saw at the four kings. And this is the same pattern throughout all of these heavenly realms. They will lead more pleasurable lives of bliss and joy and contentment, successively more blissful, successively more pleasurable, and their lives will be much longer as we go up this hierarchy of gods. And so But this is still the very, very low level. So here's some more images. This idea of the Buddha teaching in the Tavatimsa heaven is one of the most frequent motifs you'll see in a lot of temple art, especially in countries that really revere the Abhidhamma. And so that's the two lowest realms, the realm of the four kings and the realm of the 33. And so they're all the way down the bottom there where that blue line is. And so here we look up and we see just how far the next realms are from the human realm. There's 160 yojanas in between, which is sorry, this is thousands of yojanas, I think. Yeah, thousands of yojanas. And so remember we said that one yojana is about 12 kilometers. It's the distance that an ox cart can travel in a day. And so when we're talking about these heavenly realms, we're talking about these really vast distances. And so if those two lower realms are quite close to Earth, everything else is right super far away. And so what happens as we go up these realms is we start to get less sensual activity and more refinement and further and further and further away. So we're kind of like hovering up and up and up. And you see the Brahma Loka at the top there. That's really, really far away. And they actually look down upon thousands of world systems. Not just one world system, but thousands of world systems. And that's the kind of perspective they have on the universe that we can't imagine from this vantage point. And so next is the Yama realm. And I won't say much about this one. It's the lowest of the celestial realms, right? So before we've been terrestrial, now we're celestial, we're going up. And there it's regarded as a place where there's no conflict, there's no wars like there were down on Earth, and they're very peaceful and happy. And this word Yama has something to do with time. They spend a lot of time and they have they just watch flowers unfold and things like that. Again, this is associated with popularity and one day there. So now we're moving to the celestial realm. So time is different, right? Time moves differently in these realms, of course. And one day is worth 200 years. So their lifespan is 144 million years. So Buddhist time is like off the chart. And these also have sexual relations, but it's of a more refined sort. There's no penetration. It's just frottage, rubbing, touching, holding hands, looking at each other, right? So you can see how even these heavenly realms and the kind of relationships they have with each other, they're also more refined, more refined. Then we have the Tusita realm, where the beings are satisfied, delighted, and contented. And so this is regarded as the best heaven to be in, because it's just a really nice place to be. You feel good, you have a lot of pleasure. And so this is why the Bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, is always born in this realm. Maybe it's because you've got a long life of bliss in this realm, but it's not so long that you'll be there forever. And by forever, I don't mean forever in a permanent sense, but I mean in terms of billions and billions of years. So if a bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, was born into one of the very, very high realms that we'll come to later, that's billions, hundreds and hundreds of billions of years. And so it will be a long time before, firstly, that being was able to achieve enlightenment. And certainly it will be a long time for humans to hear the Dhamma, right? And so this lower realm heaven, where they experience a lot of bliss, it seems to be like a good place for the Bodhisattva. And maybe the Bodhisattva still has some sensual enjoyment. They're not enlightened yet. So they still might have some anger, they still might have some desire for sensory experience. And so that means that now there is a bodhisattva to be waiting in the Tusita heavens, yeah, named Maitreya or Maitreya, the next Buddha, the Buddha to be. He's just up there hanging out. And when the Buddha's dispensation, the Buddha's teachings in this world cycle is finished, Maitreya will descend from the Tusita heaven and take a human rebirth. And this is how it's always happened. Remember, there's been previous Buddhas and there'll be future Buddhas too. So in this realm, again, we're increasing in terms of time, 400 years, one day, and lifespan of 576 million. And here, they make love merely by holding hands and looking each other, smiling, right? Next, we have that Nimanarati Deva realm. And this realm is where the beings delight in creating. So these beings, it's like they've read The Secret. Have you read The Secret? Do you remember The Secret? Where you manifest? These beings have the power to manifest. All of those heavenly beings we just met, they just have to enjoy whatever things are already there. And they get mansions and they get sort of pleasurable, like musical instruments and things like that. Whereas these beings, they're able to create their own exciting things. So they manifest whatever they want to enjoy. And so they have creativity and imagination, and they have this kind of magical power of making stuff. Would you like to be reborn there? Yeah, anything you dreamed of, you could create it, right? For me, it's like that on Star Trek. Star Trek, don't they have something where they can just like synthesize anything, any food or whatever? Or I don't know, like when I think about us as humans, like we in the most recent period we seem to be able to make anything, right? Like we can make all sorts of realities through movies and augmented reality and virtual reality. So maybe, I don't know, maybe like the people that we're experiencing who are these creators, maybe they even came down from such a place and they still have these residual skills. Who knows? I'm just putting it out there.
Isn't that like glass?
Well, remember, this is still the sensual realm, right? This is still about pleasure and how we experience pleasure. These beings still experience pleasure through their senses. What they're not experiencing here is pain and suffering. So that's why it's a heaven, because you experience pleasure here. But yes, they're certainly still kind of very much geared towards sensual pleasure. But the reason for that is they have sensory, um, uh, they have senses. You know, they experience things through their bodies. They experience things through their senses. And in these heavens, they're able to satisfy those desires.
Do you call it hungry ghosts?
They're not hungry ghosts because they're happy. Yeah, they're enjoying themselves. Yeah, so there's a certain class. So all of these different heavens we've been looking at have different beings within them. And I just wanted to mention here that this particular realm has a certain type of goddess, which is associated with women. So remember that this realm is still gendered. The realms that we'll look at shortly are not gendered, except apparently they all look like men, but it's not gendered. And so this particular class of beings is associated with women who are given rebirth there, who have been good wives, good mothers, and things like that. It makes sense if you think about it, because women are associated with fertility and giving and creation. and also things like providing food and making a home, all of that kind of stuff, which we might see ambivalently at this time. But I think in the past, women had this incredibly potent role as creating life, and of course, they still do. And so it might not necessarily be like a misogynistic kind of thing. And the next realm that we look at is associated with this realm, and it might be a misogynistic thing in that this realm basically serves the pleasures of the higher realm. And so there probably is this gendered aspect, which is why I put it in here. So they live 800, sorry, one day is 800 years, and their lifespan is that many. And they make love by gazing and smiling at each other, but no touching, right? So very refined. Okay, so then the next round. Don't you love that these sorts of details are recorded as well? It's kind of like, so like, like, sure, I want to go to heaven, but like, what's in it for me? So then we have this next realm, which is the Paranimitawasavati Devas. Paranimitawasavati Devas. It's quite a mouthful. And this is the highest of the six sensual heavens, but still pretty low down the heavenly realm system. And I can tell we're already going to run out of time. But these people, these beings enjoy the power of other beings making pleasures for them to consume. It's kind of like us, right? But maybe we are these kind of devas, And certainly we enjoy other people to create our pleasures, especially now at this day and age, just consuming stuff on our screens, right? We don't want to go out and play a board game or anything. We just want things to come to us, yeah. So this is similar. They have the power to enjoy pleasures created by others. And it's the Nimanarati Devas who do that. They make the stuff for this other realm of beings. And it's said to be like a good chef knows what a king likes to eat. And so they make the things the king likes. So it's kind of like us again, right? In that, like, those marketers, they know what we want and they advertise it to us. Yeah. So it's kind of similar. So perhaps you're starting to see maybe there's a critique of sensuality that's happening here. Even at this top realm, we're kind of like asking, what is the point of rebirth in this kind of heavenly realm? Basically, we become these like passive pleasure seekers. We don't do anything else. We aren't, because we're so engaged in pleasure, we have no need to kind of investigate the Dhamma. We're living for a very, very long time. And, what is it? That many? 926,000 million? Is that right? And so like that long just kind of doing nothing, enjoying pleasures, it seems a bit useless, doesn't it? Like, what's the point of that kind of existence? Sure, you're having a nice time, but I mean, there's only so much Netflix you can watch, right? There's only so many nice restaurants you can visit. Must become a little bit dull. But one of the main beings associated with this realm is the god known as Mara. Mara is like the god. He's associated with like being a cheeky rascal, being a tormentor of various monks and nuns, and even the Buddha before he was born, before he became the Buddha, and causes a lot of trouble. And so he's like interested basically in deluding others and getting them back into this kind of like sensual realm, like, yeah, you should do this, you shouldn't get enlightened, you should totally just like give up and enjoy life. And so it's kind of like looking for customers, And so this realm, when we start to examine it, doesn't really seem like such a good place to be, even though it's the highest of these sensual realms. It's still stuck with this sensuality, sensory experience that keeps us trapped in samsara. In the same way that if we're not careful, we'll just end up watching Netflix and eating chocolate and hiding under the doona, and we'll never think about investigating how we could get out of samsara, how we could get out of suffering. And so you can kind of see there's definitely some sort of link here, some sort of critique as well, perhaps. And this, I just finished this group, they make love by just gazing upon each other. But because they're so refined, they don't smile. Quick question.
There's no suffering though.
Well, there's no suffering, which is why these heavens seem attractive, right? But this is why the human realm is regarded as more fortunate, because we've got pleasure, we've also got suffering. We've got enough suffering that we want to escape samsara. We don't have too much pleasure that we enjoy it so much we want to stay as humans forever. So we've got the right balance of suffering and pleasure in the human realm. Whereas these beings, although they're enjoying the fruits of their past good fortune, success of being generous and kind, all of that kind of stuff, they will enjoy this pleasurable state, which is a relief compared to this body and old age and suffering and losing your job, having politicians, all that sort of thing. That's suffering. They won't experience that kind of suffering, but it's impermanent and they will eventually die. So that's the 6 sensual realms. And I'm just gonna fast forward to the next plane. Remember I said there's 3 planes? So that's the Kama Bhumi, the plane of sensual delight and sensory experience. And that's our realm. Now we're moving very, very far above that kind of experience. And the gods that we're about to meet, the Brahmas, are completely different. They're not like these Olympian kind of gods. They're not like humans. They're much more refined beings. Their minds are much more beautiful. And the pleasure that they experience is very subtle. And it's not associated with the senses. So it's a mental pleasure. So we're far, far, far above these sensual realm and above many, many world systems. There's 16 levels, right? Basically in 4 categories. And each of those categories is successively more pleasurable, more blissful, and each of their lives is longer and longer and longer. So they have what we call mind-made bodies or fine material bodies. They only have 2 senses. They only have sight and hearing. So that means they don't have, I guess, the messier senses of like taste and smell. Because, things can smell really beautiful, but things can also smell really horrible, right? And they don't have touch in the same way. They don't have these kind of bodies. So they're missing those senses. And so for them, their experience is above, the bad smells that we encounter at the toilet, for example. It's very messy, that kind of stuff. They don't have that kind of experience. They just see beautiful things and experience beautiful sounds. And they have these huge bodies that are bright and luminous. They don't have gender. They don't have sex organs. They don't have sex. Okay, sex is finished. Down there, the lower realms. At that stage, even in the highest of those lower heavenly realms, remember, we're just looking. Now, we're not even looking. We're off the market. And so they're said to be genderless, but they're almost always referred to in the masculine, and they seem to have male pronouns. And so this kind of like, oh yeah, it's like genderless, but like very male. So this group, they don't eat material food. Again, that's messy, right? Food is really messy. You know, what goes in has to come out, right? So instead, they feed internally on bliss. This is called piti baka. And there's a story about the Buddha. He once was on alms round with his bowl, and he didn't get any food that day. Why? Because that trickster, Mara, was going around deceiving all of the people and preventing them from giving food to the Buddha. And so the Buddha went home and he said, happy shall we be, we who have nothing. We'll feast on bliss like the radiant gods. And so he's referring to these level of beings who don't need food. They just exist in this beautiful, blissful state. And another important difference, can't believe how much it's raining, right? What's happening? Yeah, I'm glad I closed the window. So their lifespans are not measured in mere human years like we've been doing so far. Their lifespan is measured in terms of the eon. And remember that eon is the time it takes for a whole world system to be created, exist for a long, 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 long time, and then to be destroyed. Remember the analogy of how long an eon is? It's the amount of time it takes for that soft handkerchief being stroked against a mountain every 100 years, stroked against the mountain. An eon lasts as long as it takes for that mountain to be eroded by that action. So an eon, a kappa, is a really long time. And these states that we're about to kind of enter into, these beings, they have practiced meditation. They have attained very deep levels of meditation. So the experience that they have as gods is the experience they developed and attained in meditation. So you can see, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, that direct result between the mind that we experience here and now and the mind that we experience in the future. By experiencing these very deep states of meditation, they create causes for future rebirth in these realms. I'm going to skip that because we're running out of time. So here's a schematic of the Brahma worlds. So there's different worlds that are related to the first jhana, the second jhana, the third jhana, and the fourth jhana. Apparently there's only one fourth jhana realm at the top there, and then there's lots of third jhana realms and lots of second jhana realms and lots of first jhana realms. So again, this idea in Buddhism of multiple world systems, multiple heavens. So a very vast view of the universe, right? And so to understand these beings, we need to understand a little bit about what these deep meditation states are. So they're called the jhanas. Who's heard of the jhanas here? Yeah? So you've got to be really careful when you listen to people talk about these things because they try to make it like really basic. Oh yeah, like I just had a jhana on my way to work. You know, I just had a jhana at the bus stop, you know. And this is this is not the same thing. For example, for a monk to lie and say that I've got jhana, if a monk was to do that, lying, trying to deceive you, they would have to disrobe. So these states are associated with superhuman attainments, very deep states of meditation. They're very rare and very profound. That's why if a monk was to lie about it, people would be like, oh my gosh, you've got jhana. They come and they give you lots of offerings, right? And so that monk would do really well. So we understand from this that, it's considered so important that to lie about it, you can no longer be a monk. These meditation states are very deep, very profound, and they're not easy to get. And so when people talk about jhanas, if they're like, oh yeah, you can just get jhana like this. No, these are very deep, very profound, very rare states. Okay? And they're made up of experiences that are beyond sensory experience, right? This is really important. The body disappears in these states. You're no longer perceiving your mind through your body. You're not perceiving your mind through your senses. And you get to that stage by suppressing what's called the five hindrances of sense desire. Makes sense, right? If you suppress sense desire, then you don't want to use the body to experience the world. Ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. So these are the five hindrances which are suppressed momentarily or for long periods through this absorption state called jhana. And so in first jhana we have applied and sustained thought, the mind going onto the object, the subject of meditation, and we have rapture, bliss, and one-pointedness. These are the factors, the first four or five, depending on different systems, of first jhana. These factors have to be present. They're really rich, they're really powerful, they're really strong, and they are experienced by the meditator. And they're kind of locked in this jhana. You can pick them up and move them around. So they're very deep states of meditation. And then you can go to the second jhana, which you lose this thought process and you just have the experience of rapture and bliss. And then in the third jhana, you lose the rapture. The rapture is quite heady. The rapture is quite shaky. It agitates the mind. It's pleasurable, but it's not as refined as bliss can be. And that's what you experience in the third jhana, just the bliss. And then in the fourth jhana, you're only experiencing equanimity and one-pointedness. So the mind is experiencing neither pleasure nor pain. It's just like very, very smooth and peaceful mind. A lot of information there. So the jhana states directly correspond to the levels of heaven that are able to be experienced in the Brahma lokas, the Brahma realms. Remember, they're removed from sensual pleasures. So these are mental states. And so the first jhana heavens, there's three different stages. And I won't go into all of them, but just to point out here that the first stage at the bottom there, you're just like a member of the party. You kind of just like, just another regular being up in this Brahma realm. And your life there is a third of a kappa, third of an eon. And then there's like, depending on your mastery of the jhana means adverting to, like knowing I'm about to have a jhana, skillfully entering into a jhana, because it's quite easy for you to get kicked out of these absorption states if you get excited or fearful. because you're losing your body. And remaining in jhana is also, you decide how long you want to remain there. I'll be here for 4 hours. And then exiting the jhana. This is when we leave the jhana, the skill with reflecting on the nature of reality afterwards. And so depending on your ability to master this practice of meditation, you will be reborn in a certain realm. And if you have a really good practice, you'll be reborn as a Mahabrahma. So it's the same for all of these second jhana realms, third jhana realms, fourth jhana realms. Your ability to be born there depends on your ability to practice that level of jhana. And they're associated with different things like the practice of metta, loving kindness, or the practice of compassion, karuna. Each stage is associated with those different mental states and different practices. And then we get to the fourth level jhana, where we encounter the Vihapala devas, who are known as the devas with great fruit. And so they live for 900 eons, right? Very long time. And then you see up there above, you see the Suddhavasa. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 5 realms there. And at the top, you see that one of those devas will live for 16,000 eons. So it's a very long time. I'm going to finish up shortly, but I just want to talk about these realms. So these realms, the Suddhavasas, are known as the pure abodes. And this is where beings who have attained the third level of awakening go. So the third stage of enlightenment, anagami, non-returners. They never get born again in the lower realms. They get reborn in these pure abodes. They're not quite enlightened yet. They haven't attained full enlightenment. They've still got some attachment to having a body, even a fine material body. They still want to exist. They haven't seen through yet impermanence completely. They haven't become a fully enlightened being. They get reborn in this place, and from there they become fully enlightened and are never reborn. They get kicked out of samsara. They're done. They're finished. So for them, it's actually a difficult place to be in a way, because they have to spend a long time alive before they can finish, right? 16,000 kappas for some of them. And in some stories that we have, these beings that are living there, they learnt what they learnt at the times of previous Buddhas many eons ago, right? So the stuff that we're learning here, who knows? One of you might become a non-returner and go up to these Suddhavasas, these pure abodes, and you might stay up there for like many, 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 many eons. Several Buddhas might come and go whilst you're up there awaiting to become fully enlightened. So that's something to look forward to. Yes.
Clarify, is it sort of a belief that a being in any realm can be reborn in another realm that's not sort of like an ascension by each level?
That's right. So the question was, is it in the Buddhist system of cosmology, is it like a progression? You just go from one realm to the next, you just keep on going up. So what can happen at any time, depending on your karma from the past, is once you finish in this realm, you die, and yeah, you could go anywhere. So you might have been a really good human, but you did something wrong in a previous life that might ripen, and then you might go down to a hell realm. And some of these beings too, they haven't fully purified everything. You know, they've still got some karma that's lingering. Otherwise, they'd be fully extinguished. They'd be fully enlightened. But because they're not, they're still subject to karma. So they could be in these very high realms, and then they could fall. The difference, though, with the regular system is that these beings who have attained stream entry and above, so those beings who attain the first stages of awakening, the second stage of awakening, third stage of awakening, they cannot be reborn in a lower realm. So these ones can only be reborn in these heavenly realms. So there is yes, generally speaking, beings can be reborn anywhere, but this level of being, they cannot be reborn in states of woe or deprivation. They can only be reborn in these beautiful states. And so I'll just very quickly finish off because I know we've got to go. So we've looked at the Rupa Bhumi, the Rupa Loka, the form plane, and then the very last one is this Arupa Bhumi, the formless plane. And so I'll just go through these different realms. So again, this is even more refined than those ones that we're just looking at. And here, they don't have bodies at all. It's only perception. And so that kind of gives us an indication of this vertical universe. You know, we kind of go from these very low states of having bodies to having fine bodies, having mind-made bodies. And here, it's about perception. There's no body, there's just minds. And the first one is boundless space. So this realm, this sphere of boundless space. The second is boundless consciousness, where the mind no longer perceives even space. It's just the consciousnness that it's aware of. And then that becomes a burden, having to rely upon being aware of your consciousness. And then, so you abandon thinking about consciousness and you just rest in no thingness or nothingness. And next is neither perception nor non-perception, where even the concept of nothingness is a concept to be abandoned. And there is only this state, which is like neither perception nor non-perception. It's not perception in that it's not doing its job of perceiving and creating information and knowledge. But it's not non-perception because it's still a residual experience of perception. So it's called this state of neither perception nor non-perception. And the analogies given by the Buddha to help, or actually not by the Buddha, by later commentators, to help us understand this is things like a novice and a monk. And the novice says to the bhikkhu, he says, "Oh, there's some water." And the bhikkhu is like, "Good, I want to wash my feet." And the novice says, "There is no water." Right? So this is kind of what it's like, you know, it's like, you want it to be there, you think it's there, but it's not there, or you think it's not there, but it's there. It's neither perception or non-perception. So it's a bit cryptic. Okay, so we managed to get through all of those various realms, going from the lowest heavens, where the beings are a lot like humans, enjoying pleasures and making love, to those Brahma realms, which are associated with minds of deep meditation. And you can only get there by achieving these jhana meditations in this life. And then the formless realms, where the mind is incredibly refined, but all of these states are impermanent. All of these states are still subject to samsara. So this is why the Buddha encourages us not to aim for heavenly rebirth, not to aim for these states, but to try as hard as we can to come out of samsara, to aim for enlightenment. And so this is why when we hear these teachings, people will always say, but don't try to become a god, don't try to enter these states. Instead, do the work to become enlightened. And at times enlightenment seems a long way off, right? And difficult to do and hard. And so there should be also some comfort, perhaps, that if we're just good people in this life, practicing as hard as we can, then we're creating good causes for good rebirth. And the better our rebirth, the better the chances we'll understand the Dharma in a more profound way. That we start to see, the mind is like this, and we start to see, perhaps after spending eons in a pleasurable state, we start to see the drawbacks even of pleasure, right? And we start to see how even pleasure is suffering. And so we still have this desire to escape from suffering. And so this is the kind of movement that the Buddha wants us to avoid, if we can, bouncing around the Buddhist cosmos from place to place. And this is why the highest pleasure, the best pleasure, is said to be nibbana, extinguishment, freedom from suffering. And this is the best pleasure that we can attain. And human life is the best place to do it. So that's the end. I can't believe I was foolish enough to think that I could fit the entire Buddhist cosmos into 3 sessions. And admittedly, I've left a lot out. So if you are interested, Ajahn Sona and Ajahn Punyadamo, who are well-known, well-respected Buddhist monks, have done a 10-part series on YouTube, which is probably a lot more sensible. And even they left a lot of stuff out. And Ajahn Punyadamo has actually written a 700-page book on Buddhist cosmology. And I relied upon a lot of that for my talks. And I really recommend, if you're interested, then you should definitely check that out. It's available online. If you just Google like Buddhist cosmology, Ajahn Punyadamo, it'll come up and it's free as a PDF. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this series. I think we've got an announcement before we finish. And I know that some people have questions, so I'm willing to stay afterwards and we can have a quick chat. But for everyone else who wants to abandon shit and go out into this flood, then please feel free. But we have just one announcement to finish up.